You know, in the Arabic language, for every action, there's always a doer. But what about the other side of that equation? Who or what is on the receiving end? Well, today we are diving deep into that very concept, the passive particle known in Arabic as the ism al-Maf'ul. This is the word that tells us exactly who or what receives the action. So let's jump right in. Just think about it for a second. If someone writes a letter, you have the writer, sure, but you also have the letter that is written. If a message is sent, you have the sender, but you also have the message that is sent. Arabic has this incredibly elegant, really systematic way of forming a special word just for this receiver of the action, and that is going to be our entire focus today. Okay, so let's meet our two key players here. Over on the left, we've got the ism al-fa'il, which you might already know, that's our doer. But on the right, we have its counterpart, the ism al-Maf'ul. This is the done to, the person or thing that the action happens to. Seriously, just think of them as two sides of the very same coin. So, the big question is, how do we actually build one of these words? Well, the beautiful thing about Arabic morphology is just how predictable it is. There are basically two main blueprints for constructing an ism al-Maf'ul, and it all depends on whether you're starting with a simple three-letter verb or one of the more complex derived verbs. Let's start with the most common kind of verb, the simple three-letter root, what we call the thulathi mujarrad. For these guys, there's one standard go-to pattern that works almost every single time. It's kind of like a linguistic cookie cutter. And here it is in action. It is so straightforward. You take your three root letters, in this case, kaf, ta, and ba, from the verb to write. You then just slot them right into the pattern maf'ul. And what's the result? Maktub, which means written. So a letter, for instance, is a maktub. It's simple, it's clean, and it's incredibly powerful. Okay, so that handles the simple verbs. But what about all those more complex, derived verbs? You know, the ones with extra letters? You might be bracing for some complicated new rule, but the truth is it's surprisingly simple. The secret isn't a whole new pattern, but just a tiny, tiny tweak to the doer form you probably already know, the ism al-fa'il. Now this is where it gets really cool. You gotta look closely here. The ism al-fa'il is mukrim, with a kasra, that it sound, on the second to last letter. This means one who honors. Now, to get the ism al-Maf'ul, all you do is switch that one vowel to a fatha, an ah sound, and it becomes mukram, one who is honored. That tiny little vowel change completely flips the meaning from active to passive. It's amazing. And if that hasn't quite clicked yet, this real-world analogy is going to lock it in for good. A mumtahin, with that I sound, is the examiner, the person giving the test. A mumtahan, with the ah sound, is the examinee, the person being examined. It's the same root, the same structure, but that one little vowel completely changes your role in the room. Okay, theory is great, but let's see how this actually works out in the wild. We're going to jump into a couple of verses from the Quran and see if we can spot these patterns and really understand what they mean in context. Our first example is from Surah Yasin. Innaka laminal mursalin. Now, the key word for us here is al-mursalin, which gets translated as the messengers. But what is its deep structure actually telling us? So let's put this word under the microscope. The root is ra sin lam, which means to send. We see that mu prefix, which is our signal that we're dealing with a derived verb. And here's the crucial part. Look at the vowel on the scene. It's a fatha, that ah sound, mursal. This tells us, without a doubt, it's an ism al-Maf'ul. So a messenger isn't just a sender. A messenger is one who is sent. The meaning is baked right into the form of the word itself. All right, on to our second example. This one's from Surah As-Safat. وَلِسَحْمِهِمْ رِزْقٌ مَعْلُومٌ. This is translated as, for them is a known provision. The word we're going to zoom in on is, you guessed it, ma'lum. Now this one is a classic, a textbook case. The root is ayn lam mim, meaning to know. And you can probably see it right away. It perfectly fits our first blueprint. It's on that maf'ul pattern. So ma'lum doesn't mean a knower, it means known. The provision is something that is known. The pattern tells you everything you need to know. Okay, let's pause here because we're about to tackle a super important distinction, one that honestly trips a lot of people up. We have to be able to separate a word's form, you know, how it's built, from its function, which is the job it's doing in a particular sentence. These two things are not always the same. This slide right here is so important to get. Let's take the name Mahmud.
Looking at its form, it's a perfect ismul maf'ul. It's on the maf'ul pattern from the root for praise. So the name itself literally means praised one. Okay, but now look at its role in this sentence. Daraba Mahmudun Hamidan. Mahmud hit Hamid. Well, who's doing the hitting? Mahmud is. So in this sentence, his role, his job, is the fa'il, the doer, even though the form of his name is passive. That's the key. Form is like the word's DNA. Role is its job for the day.
Whew, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's take a moment and pull everything together into a quick summary, a little cheat sheet of the core rules for understanding the ism al-Maf'ul.
So let's just recap the absolute must-knows. For those simple three-letter verbs, you're looking for that classic maf'ul pattern. For the bigger, derived verbs, you're hunting for that mu prefix combined with that all-important a vowel before the last letter. And don't forget, these can only be formed from verbs that actually take an object, what we call transitive verbs. And finally, please, 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 never confuse the word's form as an ism al-maf'ul with its grammatical role as the object or maf'ul in a sentence.
And that pretty much brings us to the end. But in a way, it's also a brand new beginning. Understanding the ism al-maf'ul adds this rich, passive layer of meaning directly into the words themselves. So the final question really isn't for me, it's for you. Now that you can spot this pattern, now that you can identify who or what is receiving the action, how is that going to change the way you read and understand Arabic?